It was photography, it was art, it was music and ingenuity, and there's certain things that you have to create to make these effects happen. Everything is a puzzle, and you always have something to figure out. How do you make something look like it's alive that's not? And when you hit that stride, it's kind of like puppetry. Anytime you make an inanimate object have feeling and emotion, it's amazing. Hi, my name is Gino Roy, and I am a director, visual effects artist, editor, and animator. When I got into high school and college, I used to make my own films with my friends. One of my friends from high school was going to his own college at USC. I did a lot of his projects. His name is Lee Tolan Krieger. I ended up cutting one of his first movies, and then that got bigger and bigger from there. He used to do music videos and short films, and I ended up doing another film called The Vicious Kind with him.
I can totally hear you. FYI. Right here, I'm like 4 feet from you, so if you want. Oh, you're done chatting? Okay, come on in.
And it was great. It was a really amazing learning experience. Shortly thereafter, I started working with a company called Take 180. They would make content for the younger demographic. We used to do spoofs of movies that were coming out and pop culture. I was able to help out a lot because I knew how to edit, do visual effects. I learned how to compose music there when they really needed it. That was sort of the place where I knew that I had to be a Swiss Army knife if I wanted to, stay there. And I really wanted to stay there because I really loved the people that worked there. And ultimately, they were purchased by Disney, and I worked for Disney, and that was amazing. That was a big step, and I felt like I'm finally there. I started doing stop motion at Disney. It was a one-off project. I didn't know anything about stop motion up until that point. Me and a couple of guys came together, wrote a little story, and made a stop motion film. And it turned out really well for the amount of experience that we've had just like making anything. It was a whole different animal. And then they sold that, and that became a bigger thing. It became a series, which ultimately became a very long short film. It was always just like this mystifying thing that I had no idea how they did it. So when I finally was able to do it and learn from professionals that we hired, it was like magic that you could make. It was really quite interesting. It was photography, it was art, it was music, and ingenuity, and there's certain things that you have to create to make these effects happen. Everything is a puzzle, and you always have something to figure out. How do you make something look like it's alive that's not? And when you hit that stride, it's kind of like puppetry. Anytime you make an inanimate object have feeling and emotion, it's amazing. For Blank, it was me and 4 friends. We all created the storyline. It was constantly rewriting it as we're going because of what we could capture, what we couldn't capture, things that read a different way with no dialogue, and just time limit. Like, you can't spend weeks and weeks on one shot, so you do what you can, and if it ultimately changes the idea of what you're doing, you have to kind of go with it and steer it within other scenes back to where you wanted it to be. Like 3 weeks of pre-production, and then we shot for a long time. I don't know how we got out of it alive. We were doing post during to see if everything was working right, laying in new pieces, and then building the edit as that went. And we also had a composer doing it along the way to make this feel like we're getting somewhere. But yeah, it does take a long time to do post. In stop motion, there's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. If there is one weird piece of dust that's on something for like 4 frames and doesn't get blown away, the more time you put into the production and making sure everything's clean, the less you'll have to do in post, but pretty much every clip will need to be cleaned up and have rigs removed and things touched up. The amount of time it takes to take one shot is almost equal. There's all sorts of techniques that only pertain to stop motion. Most of stop motion is figuring out how to make the perspective look like it's gigantic. So it's always a miniature set trying to look like, normal size. Your world is your set, and if you rotate the camera this way or that way, it's just like a bunch of wires and planks of wood and loose ends. In live action film, you can have a green screen behind you, but when you do stop motion, you can actually take 2 frames at once at 2 different exposure levels. So you create 2 different lighting setups. One's just like this big bold light that lights the background and just blows it out. And then the other one, you kind of shut off all the lights that are in front and make it dark, or the other way around, or whatever happens. You can still do green screen, and they do it a lot, but that's one technique that's like just stop motion does that. So post is key on these, especially when you're so close up on things, and even new products have little blemishes here or like fingerprints. So it's like every frame is a different picture that you have to clean up. When you're doing stop motion, a lot of the times you have the present you and the future you, and you have to figure out, okay, what do I want? How easy do I want to make it for the other person? So when you're taking pictures of something, you have to say, oh, do I want to just spray this with a little bit of air and make sure that it's really clean and take off all the fingerprints, or do you just want to do that later in post? And so a lot of it is fixing things that fluctuate and dealing with lighting setups that change suddenly for some reason, or fixing if the camera moves or gets bumped in any way. A lot of it's done in camera, but there's a certain point where if you've shot 400 frames, you don't want to go back and change it if it's just it's unfixable. You can either do it all again, or you can just see if you can, maneuver it within After Effects or another post application. I use the software Dragon Frame to do 100% of my stop motion captures. So once I take all the pictures that I need and pull off these shots, I take all of those images as raw clips and I make it into a raw sequence within After Effects. And I make the adjustments on color that I want to make like you would a normal picture. And then that pulls it into After Effects as footage. You can either play it back at 24 frames per second, or you can play it back at 12 frames per second. It's really how you want it to move. Each one is a unique look. You just have to pick which one that you want. You do all your edits to whatever that is, taking rigs out. Once you get all of your clips cleaned up and styled the way that you want it, you can export those out and then play around with it in Premiere or any other application that you want to cut with. A lot of the times I storyboard these out. I have a place for everything. I have the music planned out, and it's a little bit more of just assembling what I envisioned. But sometimes it's a little bit more playful and experimental. I work for a company called Sawhorse Productions. That's where we are right now. They do anything you can think of in the digital space, and in cable, they do everything from commercials to music videos to stuff for big motion pictures to documentaries that you see on Netflix and all of those other platforms. In any given week, it's usually 2 projects that I'm working on, and at most, maybe 20 projects. The hardest part about working on a ton of different projects is managing the details from each company. Make sure that you're in the mindset of what that company does and what their image is and what they want to ultimately create. If you're doing something for a company that doesn't really care what they get, they just want something cool, versus a company that sends you strict guidelines on these are the exact hexadecimal colors, these are the exact icons and fonts, and do not stray at all. It must be this many pixels up, it must be this many things over, it must be delivered with this exact name, numerical, whatever, through their own site, through everything. It gets to be a little bit of a lot, but it's mostly making sure that you're giving enough of your energy to each project and making sure that no one gets the bad end of the stick. At Sawhorse, you know, it was another point where I needed to learn more. I needed to learn how to direct live action. And that was something I was not used to. I was doing commercials for HP, I was doing commercials for Chevy and these, you know, bigger companies. I was just able to be there at the perfect time and learn. But doing something that takes 5 weeks and directing something that takes 5 hours is crazy different. It was a very big learning curve because I like to storyboard things out. I like things to come out like I storyboarded them. When you're there, you're like, you want everything to be as you planned. But there's so many things, so many beautiful things that happened during that time that were unplanned, that were better. It was something that I had a hard time, like, yeah, that looks really good. It looks really cool. It makes a lot more sense, but I have this on the boards and I want to do this. And it was hard for me to break out from that and accept that there are better things out there than what you planned. And that had a lot to do with when I shot my first series, when I directed my first series called Algorithm for New Form.
Beep, boom, beep, 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 boom. Hey, you're terminated.
I don't understand.
Your algorithm isn't as accurate as we initially believed.
Just give me 6 weeks. I can fine-tune the algorithm. Please, 6 weeks. I can fix it.
You have 6 weeks. Put on some pants.
It was very nerve-wracking for me because I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted everything to be storyboarded and pulled off exactly how I storyboarded them. And when you get there and it looks kind of like what you want, it's just disappointing. But also, I had to push through it. And in that project, in particular, I had to let go a little bit.
You were the problem with this industry. I quit my band so I didn't have to deal with fascists like you.
Oh, you quit your band?
Yeah, then my girlfriend left me.
Shucks.
One of the best moments I had was when I was doing Blank. We had these huge, beautiful, colorful sets and on this huge sound stage, and I was able to take my oldest daughter, I would like lift her and put her on the set and she could look around, and that was the most fun, where I didn't have to be, where I could show everything I was working on, and I was like so proud of it. I don't know, I'm most in my element when I'm doing stuff for families and I'm doing this show. It's an animated show. It's fun. It's got this beautiful music and look at everything. It's so much fun. That's kind of where I want to get back to. I want to do just work on stuff that has these wonderful stories that infuse these great messages. Knowing what I know now, I know that's possible.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. We really do appreciate it. We'd love it if you'd subscribe to our channel so that we can keep bringing you more creative people and their experiences. Thanks again for watching.